thanks for having the time to this space and time to talk about different these subjects that we want to work about, how to work with a partner on Latam. So let's talk a little bit on a quick pace about Rusak. We have 11 years of experience on the market. Uh, we can say now that we are a distributed team where we have our offices on Austin, Colombia, and Panama, but also we have people spread all over Latin America. We have more than 300 clients and we have delivered more than 300 projects. So there's a lot of companies that do those the same type of services, but what makes us different, like we deliver high complexity projects. Most of the clients that they decide to work with us is because they want to have the confidence that they are working with a partner on a long term, and also that we can develop things that are simple at the maybe at the for starters, but at the end it will be a complex system. Um, we are technology partners, which means that we see our clients as our partners. We are a company that we think through progress and not only money. So we work a lot for long-term relationships. We are a bit by industry high standards. The company began working with clients in the US and Canada for the past 8 years. Saying that we have been working hard to to get our standard processes going. Um, we work with various technologies. The company started with specific technologies where we were experienced, but after that we began developing more skill set with different technologies. We can say now that we can take a break with any technology since we hire in here very good engineers and not engineers with specific technologies skill set. No? We work with a lot of industries on the market. I can say that we work with all the industries right now, most of them. Yeah. So let's go with the agenda. We're gonna talk about how to work with the technology partner, choosing the proper model and scenarios where you can work with them, uh, because are different between services, how to implement it on your company step by step. After that, Diego is going to talk about communication and training, good practices with partners, and also things that can get you without a cost. We are going to get a book uh, on the next weeks out. This book basically is the same thing that we are going to talk on a very quick pace on this presentation. So we are going to publish that book with more and more details about how to work with a technology partner. Okay. Um, so all the different partners that you work on the world have different type of services and how they perform the services. Okay. But we can say that if we need to generalize it, we can say that are these services. Right now, you have IT staff augmentation, which basically you put people to work with your team, uh, engineers working with your team on a full-time basis. Managing teams that basically you put and most of the projects are agile, where you put that complete team working to deliver a project. And also you have project-based model, where it's a fixed price, and also you need to deliver a version or a batch or a complete project for a phase. But there are even though that you are producing code and you are uh, delivering things, how this performs is very different on each scenario. And we have seen that also so far agencies on other countries don't know what are there's a lot of misconceptions and responsibilities on how to do things. No? So that's why I'm going to cover right now. Um, First of all, staff augmentation. Basically, you put uh, an engineer working with your team on a full-time basis. It's a very common service. One of the things that that the person that is responsible of providing work and telling what to do to the engineers, to the people, really, any type of profile to deliver work is the final client. That also the engineer is working directly with the culture of the client on a full-time basis. Means so, like all of our clients, they have a different culture about how to do things. So on that way, there are a couple of companies that they are have a very good culture about delivering code. They have very good culture about doing different projects on a correct way. They have a successful process on how to do things. And most of that works among because the employees that they have full time working their on a daily basis on their work, they know how to do things on that way. So they have been successful internally, so that way they can be successful externally with their technology partner. The issues that can come across with this is that maybe that company they want to work with a technology partner as a contractor, but even though they are not successful internally, so probably that issues that they have internally, they are gonna pass that also to the contractor. And obviously, since they are a contractor, they are also gonna have there's like a difference between being a full-time employee, like the how it's supported with the company, like the culture, and also with the contractor. So in that way, we are seeing big companies and small companies. It doesn't really matter the size of the company. It matters how the C level and how the people that are managing the project uh, have successful ways to delivering projects on a successful way about working with people and treating people the correct way so they can deliver work. Okay, so that's one of the main points about doing that service, about how to get it into a success or how it can be a failure. Um, Also, what we have seen with this service is that you really need to uh, have a sense that even though that you are contracting a company to work with your team, is that you need to make people part of your company even though that they are a contractor. So on that way, these guys are gonna do the extra mile. They are gonna feel part of the process. If they'll feel that it's just delivering work, it's not gonna be the same thing. The other service is managed teams, and well, I can say something about this. Like normally, this type of service is when the company has a lot of type of requests for different type of projects at the same time. They have to maintain a lot of things that change each week and over time. Also, other scenarios can be like they have the client has their own leadership team. They have their own engineers, but they just need more hands or a lot of more hands, and not just one hand or two or three hands, or I don't know, like 10 engineers and one QA or two QAs. So that's when this service uh, is good, no, to work with that. Managed teams basically is when you need to deliver a version of a project or deliver a project on an agile way. So on, and we have seen also that there are companies that they are very immersed in this how to do this service, and it's very common. Uh, and we have other companies that they think that like they think that doing a project in an agile way is the same as having a, a project-based model. So there's a lot of misconception of this type of service. So that's what I'm gonna explain. So managed teams basically you put a complete team that probably will be that like this a same complete team as doing a project-based model, which normally you have a PM, tech lead, engineers, and QAs delivering work and working on on the terms of sprints, working with the terms of product owners, uh, scrum leads, and also working on a way of having things done on a 2 weekly basis. Okay, for sprints. Um, Normally, what this type of service works along is when that we have seen is a company that has a product that they are going to have a lot of versions over time, and they want to maintain that. Okay, that's a common way of doing this type of service. So they, for this type of companies, it's like it doesn't matter if you have like a bunch of features that you're going to deliver on a second phase or a first phase, and on the first phase you're going to deliver 8 of 12, because you know that the team on the second version needs to do that. So they say a project that is going to go away on a lot of versions. Okay, also it works a lot with companies that wants that like the teams to submerge on the same knowledge. So there are a couple of clients that we have that they want to have their team knowing all the knowledge that our team gets on the project on a technical side, and also on the business side. So that's the only way of doing that, is doing a project on an agile way. Because doing a project on a project-based model, which is waterfall, most of the construction of the project is going to be done on our side, and when we deliver that, uh, the client normally is going to see demos, and they're going to have the business logic, but knowing how the different ways of internally how things work, they won't know it because they are not on a weekly basis on how things are performing internally. Okay. Um, Also, this service works a lot when the company has a lot of changes over time, and if they don't have a scope completely defined. So normally scopes are defined on a monthly basis or a 2 week basis. 2 week basis, I think, is too agile. Having scopes defined and sprints for 2 weeks is a very good process, but it's where it's defined over changes, and there are different product owners that are defining work on the process. Also, if it's a company that is very it's not too organized, and they have a lot of people that change of decisions and directions over the process, and the best way of work is doing this type of service and not a project-based model where basically you will deliver and you have a software project, but all the scope of all the tasks are not defined immediately. How is measurable on this type of service for a budgeting is basically time. You budget time. You budget like on this version we are gonna have 1,000 to 2,000 hours of work of an engineer, and you're gonna have other amount of hours for other type of program. Previous model basically is that most companies know about this methodology, is that where you have all the scope defined, you can have it defined before uh, doing the execution of the project, or after, when you have a milestone where you have to deliver a consultancy. Okay, this is a uh, fixed price project, and you have a specific scope to do. Uh, the good thing of this is that you have a budget and you know what you're going to deliver. But the bad thing of this is that any type of change that you're going to have that impacts of cost and time, you're going to have more codes, and the process is going to be not too fast. You know? uh, so basically, that's the standard way of working on any type of with any type of partner on the industry. Um, so choosing a proper model and scenarios for your company. So basically, one is which are the type of clients that you are used to work. What I have seen is that it's very simple. Like if you sell managed teams, you want that you work with your partner also with managed teams. If you sell staff augmentation, you want to work that staff augmentation. That's easy. But on other scenarios, you're gonna have like you have a strong leadership team, and you only need people, engineers. On other scenario, you have your leadership team occupied, and you need a complete team. So that's where managing come along. Also, the culture of the company, that's very important. Like your culture that you have right now internally, and the process that you have from that way. That team scenarios, like we work with big companies where each team is different. Like it's like different type of cultures that are spread over a company. So that's very important when you work with with its service now. And how to board issues that may arise. So on any project there are issues, and that's very common, and that's gonna happen. If your partner tells you that uh, there's gonna be any issue working together, uh, that's a lie, because maybe you don't have that issue in the first 6 months or a year or even like 2 years, but maybe on the third year of working you're gonna have issues, and that's very normal. But um, the how do you know the correct partner is that how this company has their how you know when that scenario is gonna come, how they are gonna board that issue, and you're confident about their leadership team is strong, and also they know about how to resolve this. Okay. Also, they are also between the leadership teams, and also about things get done between the two companies. There has to be a lot of transparency, and a lot of confidence. Yeah. So I'm gonna talk about a quick pace about general scenarios that can happen between different types of service. One is like when the client has experience working with software partners. Like we here work with companies that they have never worked on, or they have had failures working with other software partners, and they just want to get things done in a successful way, but they don't know that path going into there. Okay. Also, a client that has like normally this is gonna be a final client that where they they haven't worked on the past too much software, and they haven't been part of the process, and they don't know all the issues of work of doing this type of work. Normally what we do on Rusal, we try to educate that client on how to do things. Okay. So it's more demanding that type of projects where the client hasn't had different experience working with a software partner. The other scenario is that when the client has a bad experience working with a previous partner, that's when it's pretty difficult, because basically you as a partner need to fix things that the other company did incorrectly, or for the how the client thinks it was incorrectly. So you need to fix that, and you need to educate that, and you need to probably on this industry you can cover all the specific details before it happens. But you need to, when that happens, you need to come aboard and try to explain that correctly, and which will be the outputs of that situation. Um, there are different scenarios about doing staff augmentation. Basically, there are scenarios about how the company is going to board a project when the team is not delivering tasks based on speed, and that's our way of doing that. Like based on estimations, based on prioritizing data about how that team thinks that they need to deliver. So that's what, like, we have a lot of clients and we have different ways of working. So that's where you need to get along and know what's the standard way of doing that, or most of the standard way of having that performed. The other scenario that is very important is about if the engineer assigned to supplementation is not delivering the task based on a quality expectations. Normally what you do is that obviously there's a vetting process, and obviously there's a process of knowing who you are working with. But basically you need to understand, you need that your team understand why we are not delivering equality. It's because the scope of the task, is because the engineers has made dumb decisions. It's because the architecture of the project is incorrect implemented or is defined incorrectly. So there are a lot of scenarios about what's the quality of the project is not being delivered. You have a QA, you don't have a QA. The PM is on a sprint basis is checking all the first level functional testings. Like that's different processes that you need to know uh, before getting defined what's happening with the quality. Other thing is that the engineering assigned to a staff augmentation project makes different technical decisions with a consultant team first. That's a thing that happens. You need to get aboard with the culture. You need to get aboard like making a tech lead, having the engineer defining things. Also, the engineering having a double check with the tech lead. Also, that tech lead have specific things that 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 tech lead knows that the engineer may fail, and he needs to define that correctly. So on that way, the sprint is successful now. Other things that may can happen is that the daily and weekly operation flows are not going as a client expects. This is a subject that has a lot of ways of seeing that. Um, and what we have done at Rustack is that when we have a new client, we tell them like, you wanted to work on more with us about the processes, or you have all the processes defined and you are confident that it's going to be successful. So in that way, we can basically know how our client is going to pour things on the flows. No? Yeah. With managed teams, there are different scenarios about having a that you can have on a project. One is that maybe you can have too many business logic or technical dependencies, and that's when the project is getting maybe it's getting delayed. There are too much definitions that need to get performed before working, and there are a lot of scenarios that you need to cover in here. Basically, you need that a leadership team takes the flag out when the things happening. You need to prioritize when the engineering team is gonna execute because you still need to do definitions. So there are a lot of scenarios about when the project is very complex or have a lot of dependencies of other providers or other software, where you need to basically play chess and know basically when things need to happen correctly. Sprint delay occurs and the project get back or stalled. Basically, this scenario affects, obviously can affect this one, is when you have delays, okay? And these delays are a lot of situations that may overcome, like you have more features that are getting some on the project, you have estimations that came to more time, and even though that team is developing correctly, it takes more time because basically until you were executing that, you can see that it will take more time, or basically there are complexity with libraries or how to do things or integrations that even though that you try to estimate it correctly, you can do it in that scenario. Uh, Other things is scope definitions. That's why we recommend when doing these services that you need to have scope definitions for a month and sprints every 2 weeks, because if you have scope definitions for each 2 weeks, you won't have time to execute and think also what you're going to perform next 2 weeks. Okay. Uh, the project needs more engineers for support, basically, and that's where the leadership team of the project, which basically is a PM and a tech lead and also a product owners, need to be very agile and very intelligent and very proactive, knowing who to take out, who to take in, who to add on a team, so things get along and you are delivering work. The budget impact is too high without a reason. that's an error of the provider or of your partner, because you need to know before on you need to know at the end of the week, or every 2 weeks, or every 3 or 4 weeks, like what are the risks of the project that you're having right now. Like you're having more features that product owners don't know, like we need to do things again. uh, so there are a lot of variables that can impact on the budget, but basically the leadership of the client needs to get along and know these risks that are happening, so you can get along and know what that is going to happen and how both companies are going to work on that. Other scenario that can happen is that when the client's approvals are not delivered on time. That's basically normally what's happening here is because the client is not submerged on all the project, and you're gonna having approvals of like main features of the project. So basically, it's the product owner or the PM on the client side. When that happens, that's a risk, because that can happen that you can go to 2 3 sprints, and if you're delivering ways work, and you are that the PM or that product owner of the client is happy, but when they need to approve things on a formal way, they began to see that there are things that weren't never like talked and they weren't built. So that's where on the client side, all the team needs to be focused on having a very scope definition and being submerged in the project. So our feedback is that the steps that a company needs to do to define working with a partner, compare your services with your partners, list the different scenarios that can happen, and you need to think like you need to like your company, the issues that may arise, how organized your company is, you need to know that type of leadership that you have in your company, so in that way you can list that and you can work that with your partner. uh, if you need to correct things, you can on your internal processes, on your culture, or how you board projects, you can go shopping for a partner, but you need to know that you need to uh, get that along over a process. No? You need to go shopping for a partner, validate who is that company and the partner behind. That's a thing that we have seen that other companies are very, very curious about who are the founders, and other companies that's not too important, uh, because basically the founders and the leadership teams are the ones that are going to board products correctly, and a very win-win situation for both sides. If it's always a win situation for your side and not for a partner side, at the end that's going to be a, a partnership that is going to be a failure. Get all the legal subjects done and review. That's very important, obviously. Initialize the text projects. Obviously, all the time you have first project, second project that get along, so you can have that confidence and success that this is a correct partner. Uh, and scale the relationship, over time. Great. So I'm gonna pass in here uh, that presentation to Diego, so you can keep the talk.
Thank you, Alejandro. Okay, so I'll share my screen. Okay, so I'll start talking a little bit about myself pretty quick. I'm the CTO of Rootstack, and I work basically with all of our development team, and also managing the technologies that we use, and everything related to the technical part of the company, right? So something we think it's important to talk about is about the good practices, us the partners should have when they work with their clients. So let's start by the first thing, which is procedures. Okay, there's something pretty important that I feel that every partner should have, and it is having a predefined way of acting under specific or important circumstances. And I put a couple of examples here. For example, whenever a site goes down, what are the steps that we need to do? Whenever a site gets hacked, what are the procedures that we need to do? Like take a backup of the current state of the site hacked, restore a backup, or how to start checking where could the vulnerability be, stuff like that. And another example here is what should we do in the case of a data breach. Okay, so and again, as an example, if there's a data breach, a company should have already in place a procedure like what kind of to check first what kind of data are we storing, where do we store it, how could this impact our client's client, do we need to do any kind of communication, do we need to talk with lawyers, do we need to get a security specialist. All of those things that you need to do should be documented on a procedure in case something like this happens, and we don't improvise. Okay. The next thing is checklists, and when I say checklists, it's about also things that we normally do as a partner. How frequent that we do frequently, we should have it in place so we don't forget anything whenever the time to do it comes. And here are some examples. Again, whenever we're going to do a launch, the stuff that we need to check: do we have certificates in place? Do we have a time set? How are we going to make that movement into production? Those things should be on a checklist. The project manager who's managing the project should go over them and should have answers for all of them. Another example is data migration. If we're migrating data from one system to the other, everything that we need to have in mind. It's not something that we feel that we should be thinking about the moment that the situation comes. We should have, when I say we as a partner, as an agency, in place, right? So no one forgets about important things like if we're migrating a website, what are we going to have what are going to be the new URL paths? Are we going to maintain the same stuff like that? Everything needs to be in place. Another example, when a project is going to start, the project manager should go probably over a list and make sure that the team has all of the accesses they need, that are Git repositories in place, that I don't know, we have sent a template to the client for the assets that we need for their website or whatever project it is. Also here, for example, project documentation checklist will be: do we have information when we build a documentation about how is the infrastructure of the project? If we have listed the Git repositories, languages, whatever the company normally has, this checklist should be in place so we don't improvise and we already have everything we need when we need it. The next part here is coding practices. So what I mean about this is that whenever you work on a technology, every technology has their good practices, their coding standards, the way they kind of do the stuff, and we should be following that on for each technology that we work with. However, even if that exists as a general rule on that specific technology, between engineers, if you look at the code or the way they structure stuff, could be completely different. So a good practice is that inside an organization, there are rules in place on the way that we're going to work or build the stuff. And here are a couple of examples about what am I talking about. For example, and this is our specific case, we decide to build our code regardless where our client is in English, and there's a reason for that, and it is that if someone, I don't know, from Russia comes to work on the project, or someone from China or from the US, everyone normally understands English, so it's easier to do the code in one language that everyone can understand. Other examples here are like, how do we name our variables? We always say, I don't know, action, and then something else on the name, and stuff like that, that it's not really part of the language or the technology, but it's the way we develop. And the reason to have this is that whenever someone comes in or out of the project, you will find a similar way of doing the stuff, okay? And it's easier to ramp up someone when everyone follows the same rules, to read the code, because you will expect everything to be on the place you expect based on those rules, and written the way we have to find. So everything looks like it was developed by just one person, right? Everything looks the same, it's structured the same. And then more examples of what I just said, like if there's a rule on how we create our folders on our code project, what do we consider X or Y to know where to put it? What are going to be our URL structures? If we define those rules as a company, whenever someone comes, they will know how to read the code that it is there. Something else that I think it's really important that you should look on a partner is if they think about the stuff they do, and they try to build tools around it to be more productive. And there's something really important here, because maybe at some point you compare two providers like those, and one cost, I don't know, X amount of money, and the other one the double per hour. And you will think like, okay, this one is way more expensive. I should go with the cheaper one. But the cheaper one does the same thing over and over and over again whenever they start a project, to say something, and they take, I don't know, 20 hours to do something that you will be charged for, that the other company simply already have in place, because it's the thing that you do over and over again. And at the end, that one that maybe costs a double, it's going to be at the end better quality and sometimes cheaper, because it's not doing the same thing over and over again. So a partner should have in place stuff like boilerplates, templates, a list of libraries that they normally use and they know that it works, and that makes the development of a project way more effective. Another thing here is augmentation. This goes in the same direction of the rest of the things that I already talked about. Something that we like to think about is that we as an organization are not one person or a set of persons, and it is important that we try to minimize the dependency on someone inside the company, because a lot of stuff can happen. The person could get sick, could leave the company, and if we have stuff documented and on the right place, that will help. That will avoid us a lot of issues, right? Because there's a place where I can go understand the information, the stuff about the project, where things are, And if there are some common issues of stuff that is special about a project, I will know there, and I will not need to rediscover those stuff again. Like, let's say there's a project that to update the libraries has something pretty specific and complicated, and you could just put on a documentation like, whenever you're going to update this project, you make sure that you use this version of this thing when you run this command, for example. That will save you from discovering again and again how to solve that problem that you always see when you update the project. Um, and also where it helps a lot with ramp ups, right? Some people comes in and out of the project. They don't need to rediscover stuff. They will just have, or they will just can go over documentation and understand the project. Another thing that it is important for us is communication and training. Communication it's key on, I guess, on every type of relationship, not just software development, but in this case, that's what we're talking about. And we think it's really important because if we don't have good communication, a lot of issues can happen, right? There's a lot of details on when you do software. Common things that we try to do is first communicate problems as early as possible, so everyone is clear and expectations are properly set. If we find an issue, if we think something is going to take more than what we anticipated, that needs to be communicated. The other thing is it's good to set up channels and ways of communicate also. And because sometimes if we just communicate all over the place, over the phone, over WhatsApp and then email, and then on the ticketing system, information can get lost. So it's really important to set up communication channels and have a place where we're going to have this information and the way we're going to communicate. Also, it is important to give status about what we're doing always. So, for example, we have some practices here that I mentioned here, which is one is an M not stay status. So, whoever is working on a project at the end of the day needs to say what they were able to accomplish, if they need something from someone else. And this happens besides stand-up meetings and all of that. It's just at the end of the day, what I was able to accomplish, and if I have any problems. And we can also set up stuff like weekly statuses with the clients. We can also set bi-weekly demos and stuff like that, so everyone is aware of what's happening all of the time, right? So we can avoid any kind of issues at the mid or end of an implementation or development of project. Something else that it is important, it is training, and that happens normally internally, but a partner should be, this should be important for them. And here are a couple of reasons why we should do it. The first one is we have here internal meetings of technologies used by the organization. That's important to do it because if there are tools that we normally use and the people that is entering the company don't know about, it's important to train them in those tools, or at least know the basics so they know how to use them. There are other things like basics we feel that the person should know. For example, something that we think that everyone should know on the technical level is the basics on how to manage a server. Even if they're not a DevOps engineer, even if they're not doing anything related to servers, it is important for us that everyone knows how to do specific stuff, because they will encounter problems or situations, and if they know what's happening, they might be able to come up with a solution faster. There's also something important that we think it should be done, which is regular meetings to share experiences. the partners are always working with new challenges and situations or technologies, and even if the rest of the people is not working on them, it is important to share those experiences so they have a better idea uh, of those things whenever the situation comes, right? And the other people that was not involved in that can also give feedback or also share related experiences. And something important also is the partner should be always trying to take control risks to learn and work with new technologies, right? And not just be this company that just knows this thing for 10 years and do nothing else. And a good way to do it is just on internal projects, play with those technologies and stuff. For example, our website that we launched a new one, I think 2.5 months ago or 2 months ago, and we used that completely new technology that we didn't have used in the past. So that's kind of a control risk, right? Because it's something that if it goes bad, it will only affect us internally, not our clients. So that's a good way to experiment and learn new stuff. Um, Things also you will probably get if you work with a partner. It's first of all an account manager, and this is pretty important. Besides whoever is working with you during a project inside a relationship, it is important to have someone that can talk with you outside of the project and see how's the health of the relationship, how's the project going, having follow-up meetings to see if everything is going smoothly, having someone that you can escalate the problem with outside of the project, and also to meet up with you regularly to see if there's any room for innovation and improvement inside the stuff that we're doing with you. And another thing that it is important is sometimes you have when you work with a partner that has a big team. I call it like support teams, which is um, even if you're working, let's say, on a project with 5 people, the organization could be like us, 90 people or 100 people. And all of the times stuff that happens, and here's an example of our internal chat. There's a channel called developers, everyone's there. And whenever someone has a problem, they just ask for the rest of the team to see if someone has encountered that issue, right? So it's not just these 5 persons that are working with you, is those 5 persons plus the experience of everyone else that could help on a specific situation, that could have had that experience before and just fix the issue that they have faster. So those are the points that I wanted to share. I don't know if there's any questions about what Alejandro talked about or what I just talked about.
Thank you, Diego. So if anyone have any question, please let us know. We will be pleased to answer you all. So if you want, you can raise your hand, or if you don't want to speak, you can write it down on the chat and I'll be looking for it, okay? Okay, I think everything was clear. Diego, thank you so much. Alejandro, Diego, thank you so much. The information was very clear. So have a nice day and thank you for your attendance.